It's 11 o'clock and we're going to go out for a boat ride and then visit the ruins of a castle, but I want to talk about making a company, creating a company, starting a company? But before I can talk about that, we're going to make a move.
No, we're not.
Yeah, we are.
No, we're not.
That's close. So the Loch Ness Monster's in here somewhere. Do you reckon the builders were eaten by the monster? The Loch Ness Monster. Yeah, we can't sort of just sit still and wait for 20 minutes. We went for a walk.
We also have open inflatable life rafts. In an emergency, the crew would launch these or they can float free. Do not attempt to use them until instructed.
I think it's a nice little break. I was going to talk about the company or the planning of starting the company, and then we went for a little wander around Loch Ness instead. Right, I'm going to grab a couple of minutes before we have dinner. As much as I would love to say sport and sports coaching isn't a business, it is a business. So to start a sports club is the same as starting a company. The participants are the clients, the parents, I guess you could say are the clients, and then me as the coach or the club with however many coaches there are is the business, it's the company. The club being the business, selling the services, the coaching services or the facilities, the equipment, the safety, the organised sport as it were. This means accounting, finances, marketing, sales, venues, safeguarding, policies, procedures, logistics, insurance, all of that sort of stuff is managed by the person running the company, the business, which is the head coach, normally to start with. Now, I haven't seen many people talk about this online when it comes to sports coaching, and the conversations seem very nebulous. So I'm going to speak to what I've learned, what I know right now. I could be wrong, and this is going to be specific for starting an English sports club in trampoline. But a lot of these things are going to be able to transfer. So safeguarding, you need to pay for a safeguarding for the coach or all of the coaches, DBS check for adults involved if you're working with children or vulnerable adults, or most people, I believe. Then you'll also need to cover insurance, so whether that's public liability or whether that's insurance through a national governing body, you'd have to work out who that's with, which one you pick, which one you need. Then for competition, if you are going to be competitive in any way, you'd need to work out where the competitions are, registration for said competitions, and all of these things, so registration of the club, registration of the players, costs money. So are you going to charge the players for that? Is the club going to pay for that? If the club is, where do they get the money from? And this is where the head coach, the business, the company needs to work out, okay, are they going to do fundraising? If they are going to do fundraising, is that as a charity? Is that a not-for-profit organisation? Is it for a limited company? Company by guarantee? Company by shares? There's loads of business stuff here. Stuff that I know I did at university with the Who Runs Sport module, but I never paid attention to that module, so I apologise, Mark. I wish I paid attention more. And then when you go for funding, some people will fund projects. So they'll fund for equipment for, say, a trampoline. They'll pay for the equipment, or they'll pay for coaching qualifications, maybe, but they won't pay for admin fees. So cost of the court, or cost of the field, or cost of coaching. Like that won't get paid by funding. That needs to be paid by somewhere else if you're going to pay the coaches. And this is where a lot of sports coaches are volunteers. To use some rough numbers of what I'm working with right now, if we look at safeguarding, that's about £40 safeguarding, so that's myself. And then DBS, that's another about £50, depending on if it's an enhanced DBS. And DBS can work with either facilities or with clubs. So if I'm going to work outside of a facility, I'd need an enhanced DBS, and DBSs can change. So call it 50, it could be a bit more, could be a bit less. But then I need to register the club. I need to register as a business so I can get funding. And by doing that, I need to choose as to what sort of business it's going to be, what sort of limited company it's going to be, or a CIC, or a charity, or not-for-profit, or whatever. And depending on which one I choose, there could be an upfront cost, and that can range from like £10 to I think 150-ish, depending on, again, what business or company I turn myself into. Or I guess create, because it's not me, it's the thing, it's the entity, and then I am the person running it. Or maybe people, because you might need 2 or 3, again, depending on what you're doing. And then for facilities, trampoline is indoors, so I can either hire out a badminton court, a half court, or a full court, each of which is going to be different costs. Roughly, in my area at least, it's about £11 per hour for a badminton court. So for argument's sake, let's say I've got 2 trampolines on a badminton court, it's going to take time to set it up and pack it down. So I need to book out 2 hours for a 1-hour session, say half-hour pack up, half-hour to pack down. That's 2 hours, so that's £22 for a 1-hour session. And that's just paying for the court. So if we've got, say, 5 people per trampoline, that's 10 people. You're looking at £3 per person. That's if you've got a maximum session just to essentially break even. But realistically speaking, you're not going to get maximum. So if we go, say, 3 per trampoline, so we've got 6 people, £22, and that's just to pay for the court, you're now looking at £4 a person. But you need to service the equipment. So every year there's going to be service costs. There's also going to be annual costs for website hosting, email hosting. If we're going to use a website, or if it's going to be a Facebook page, it could be free, and then that's you got to weigh up. And then if we've got email, are we paying for a domain, or are we using an @Gmail? I mentioned already the registration fees. But of course, coaches need to be qualified, which means they need to do level 1, level 2, whatever, plus CPD updates to make sure that they've still got their qualification, and they also need to be registered as a coach. So they need to pay in BG for at least, they need to pay, I want to say £95 a year just so that they're allowed to coach, because they need to be a BG member. And then the individual also need to pay for BG membership, but that's a little different. But that then raises the question, okay, if the coach isn't going to get paid, but they still need to pay to coach, they're paying to volunteer to help. That's not a good business or company model, which means that the sessions, we need money in some way, because you can't ask for funding for that. As I mentioned, most funding goes towards equipment and big projects, not admin costs of paying coaches. So the session again goes up in cost. So now you're looking at £5 an hour. Now there's loads of other maths and numbers and legislation and policies and things to consider, but that's just some of the things that I've been thinking about recently. But at the crux of all of that, starting a company, starting a business, starting coaching, starting a club, starting anything really, including this channel or YouTube channel or whatever, value. What value are you delivering? If you're delivering the same thing as everyone else, why would they pick you over someone else? There are other clubs that are local to me, which is why I'm not coaching at them, because I don't want to make it feel like I'm stealing clients, because participants are essentially clients. If I'm coaching at another club that's local to me, and then I start my own club, then people could move. So that's why I'm coaching at a club that's further away, so I don't feel like I'm stealing clients. But there needs to be a value proposition for the club. And for me, with the literature that I've read in sports coaching, there's also, for me, needs to be a philosophy of practice, a philosophy for the coaching club, rather than one coach coaching one way, one coach coaching another way, then there being conflict in the sessions, or conflict between participants being coached by different people, or at different times in the day. And that's something that I've experienced in football, where you go from one team to another team and the coaches are different, and the whole club is just a whole different dynamic. I would want something consistent. So again, you're working out all of those policies and procedures. How do you interact with parents? How do you interact with younger age groups? How do you interact with SEND? How do you interact with people that want to watch, people that want to help out and coach? How do you work with individuals and adults that want to be separate, some want to be together? Abilities, do you mix abilities? Do you keep them separate? Is it competitive? Is it recreational? All of these sorts of things come into the company philosophy. And once you've got the qualifications, you've got the paperwork, you've got the funding, you've got the equipment, you've got all of that sort of set up, and you've got your value proposition, you've got your coaching philosophy, now you need to market yourself. You need to show, hey, I'm here, I exist. Do you want to do X thing, in my case, trampoline. But it's not that linear because you can't do all of that before you actually have someone to turn up. Minimum viable product, or whatever you want to call it. If no one's going to turn up and buy the service, if no one's going to want to be trained to trampoline, then why would you spend all this money up front to get things going? And that right there is the dilemma that I'm sat at right now, because getting people to answer surveys of whether they're interested or not is like pulling teeth from a wall. It's just so difficult. My 3 main barriers right now are venue, because I need to confirm the venue. Trampoline, you need the height and you also need the storage facilities. I have a venue in mind. I'm waiting for them to get back to me because they are slower than I would like to be in communication. The next one is funding for equipment. Trampolines aren't cheap. If you look at garden trampolines, for example, they're £250 to £300. That's normally what trampoline parks use, garden trampolines, so £300, £400, and then you just get loads of them. Olympic trampoline, you're looking at £4,500 for a starting trampoline. If you want a competitive, highly competitive trampoline that you see in the Olympics, you're looking at £10,000 plus the index, so £15,000. So £30,000 for 2 trampolines if you're looking Olympic style trampolines, and £30,000 isn't easy to come by. And then the third barrier, which is sort of a barrier, is qualifications. It's insurance, it's I need to do the level 1, or I need to have a level 2 or a level 3 before you can do certain skills, and that's working out which national governing bodies. I'm working on the level 1 and I'm working with other coaches, so it's not necessarily a barrier for the company, for the club, but is a barrier for me if I want to have more control, or the amount of control that I would like to have, being a bit of a control freak. I started this vlog to document the journey of becoming a professional coach, however that evolves, and this is where I'm at right now. Just being completely honest, I'm starting a company, club thing, but I have a long way to go.